California MBA DE&I Podcast. My name is Ty Christensen, and I'm the host of the podcast today. Barry, thank you so much for being with us today. I'm also the co-founder and chief diversity officer for Arrive Home. Arrive Home is a national affordable housing program that aims to increase home ownership within low to moderate income individuals and underserved communities through our unique product offerings. First, as always, I'd like to start by thanking our sponsor, PCB Mercor. PCB Mercor is a nationwide real estate valuations management company. We appreciate your continued sponsorship and support of our podcast. Today, my guest is Don Griffiths. Don is VP of National Operations at Union Home Mortgage, where he has been for over 25 years. He's also a certified mortgage banker and past president of the Ohio Mortgage Bankers Association. So welcome, Don. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Ty. Thank you for having me here today. It's nice to see your smiling face again.
Thank you. Well, let's get started. Tell our guests a little bit about yourself, where you're from, life experience growing up, where you live right now.
All right. So, as a kid, I was raised in the first city west of Cleveland, known as Lakewood, Ohio. And like a lot of things in life, as you get older, you don't realize how great it was. And it was a small little community, but it was packed with people because they had all kinds of apartment buildings, multi-unit homes, commercial buildings, all in with all these single family homes. And so there's always lots of kids to play with in the community. And they just did an amazing job putting in, like today you hear people don't want to put in multi-family and commercial to single family. It always felt so residential, but they just planned it so well. And it was really wonderful because as a kid, we never gave a thought to going to the schoolyard or being out all day. As a matter of fact, the parents in those days was kind of like, hey, Don, get your sandwich, get your glass of milk, and get out of the house. We'll see you at dinner time, right? So it was really just a fantastic community to be raised in, and very middle class. My dad was a Cleveland policeman, worked 2 jobs. So I'd see him after 11 o'clock and maybe before 7, worked all day like a lot of dads do to support in the middle class. So just a really great upbringing. I ended up graduating from Lakewood High School. So in this little town, people are sometimes surprised by this, but we had over 4,000 kids in my high school, and my graduating class was over 1,000. So it was like,
wow,
it was really a large class there, but just so many great memories. And when you leave a town like that, you just sometimes don't realize like how great it was. I thought every town's like that when I leave, and it's like, it was really amazing where everybody just looked out for each other's kids and everybody felt, safe and so forth. So it was really a great upbringing in that town.
Oh, this is so wonderful. I love hearing stories like this because, as a child of the 80s, I too was given a sandwich in my bicycle and told to go have a great day, latchkey kid right here. And the kids nowadays, you can barely get them out of the house. Like all they want to do is sit on their phones or on their iPads and their electronics. We've kind of lost that, generation of, you can tell where everybody is by how many bikes are on the one outside.
Exactly, yeah.
That's where we kind of knew where all of our friends were. So it's great to hear that your upbringing was so idealistic. Tell us how you got into the mortgage industry.
Well, you know what? I had no vision for college at all because I just thought I was so smart and so charming. Who wouldn't want to hire me, And, so I had no vision to go. I just thought somehow I'm going to make it to the top. And when I was getting ready to graduate in 1979, my brother said, hey, Don, how would you like to come on a job interview at this mortgage company? And I thought, that sounds great. I didn't really know anything about mortgage company, but I thought, man, I could be a banker. I'm going to be somebody, And so I thought I'll go on the interview. Ty, what they told me about the job, I have absolutely no idea in the world what they told me. I know they said I was going to get paid $611 per month.
Oh.
And I think what might have been the ultimate bait and switch ever was after I actually started doing the job, I was knocking on delinquent customers' doors all over the state of Ohio, in Michigan, securing vacant homes, attending evictions. And after I did that job, I was like, I don't know what else is involved with banking, but I've got to find it, whatever it is, because this is not fun.
No.
And for an 18-year-old kid, imagine being an 18-year-old kid and knocking on a grown adult's door and talking to them about their delinquent mortgage payments in life. It was an eye opener, you know. So it fortunately led me to this great place and the great experiences I had today. But the foundation of it was a little more challenging for sure.
Oh my, I cannot imagine being 18 and knocking on like a grown-up's door and saying, oh, by the way, you're 6 months delinquent. How do you want to cure this? Have you heard about any loss mitigation options?
And it was, Ty, it was different because there really wasn't discussion in those days about loss mitigation options.
Wow.
So I think it had every reason why they created a lot of those laws, because it was a whole different approach to it. And but again, I just, from that, it was a great place to start in some respects, because you do learn to respect the people that work in that end of the business, right? And you do have great respect for people that have issues in life. Everybody wants American dream home, but that doesn't mean people don't face illness, loss of job, other tragedies. And you know, you also have to be able to work with them on those things. So it was at 18, it was a PhD in life for sure for me.
Well, I think that that's wonderful to have that exposure at such a young age and to broaden your understanding of the human experience, you know, at such a young age. In '08, after the Great Recession, I transferred into loss mitigation, and I was in loss mit for 10 years. And you're right, a lot of the stories you hear, it just makes you have more empathy and compassion for individuals, which I took that learning experience and really used it when I was underwriting, right? Looking at every credit file as not just a FICO score and delinquencies, but really trying to understand the person's story through their credit report and various LOXs and such. So I'm a little jealous that you had that experience from such a young age.
Well, it served me well over time. So I certainly don't regret it at all, you know, and it transitioned to other great things. So it was a great experience. And it also made you feel great when you were helping people, because some days there's a perception that you don't want to help people. There's a perception sometimes that you want people to lose their homes, and banks don't make money that way. You know, they make it through when you're making your payments. So, you know, when we would help people and put them on the path to success, I think for those of us that love the business, there's also great joy in seeing somebody get back on the right path.
Yes, absolutely. Well, tell us about your time at Union Home. You've been there for over 25 years. I'm sure you've had a multitude of positions.
I have. It's really it's been a great journey, because when I came here at first, it was kind of a funny story. I had a great job. I used to work at Citizens Bank. It was then known as Charter One Bank. And the owner of our company said, hey, Don, I got a position open. Would you come here? And I said, nah, the bank already treats me good. It was a great bank, treated me really good. And then he hit me where it hurt. He said, well, would you meet me out for dinner? And I like eating a little bit, right? So I'm like, now you're hitting me in a weak spot here. So I went out and had dinner with him. And after having dinner with him, I came home and, you know, what do you think your wife's going to say? She says, Don, would you go work with him and that company? And I says, I think I would. And she says, you know, did they offer you any money? And I said, not a nickel. And she goes, well, why would you go work with him then? And it was funny because this is the first time I think in my career I had really talked to somebody that just always wanted to raise the bar, always wanted to get better. And our owner, Bill Cosgrove, talks about being world class, which I don't know if you ever know when you're at world class, but you certainly know when things aren't world class. And it's a high bar to reach, and it really pushes all of us to build a better company. And, you know, I've watched it go from 43 employees when I walked in the door doing just business in the state of Ohio to 48 states, you know, close to 200 offices, 1,600 employees. So it's been really a fantastic journey. And you just learn a lot, you see a lot through that journey. And, you know, I eventually came in more with an underwriting background, and that eventually developed into the operations. So, you know, I saw operations, what it's like on a small scale and then a big one. And it's just like a family. Little children, little problems, big children, bigger problems. You know what I mean? And,
Yeah.
you know, if you have the right people, though, you work through it and you make the company great.
Oh, well, that's wonderful. Yes, little people, little problems. But speaking as someone that has an 11-year-old and a 21-year-old, I see the disparity every single day. Well, tell us about your experience being president of the Ohio Mortgage Bankers Association.
So it was really, you know, a great experience, because with having so many years in the industry, you might know a lot about the business, but you may not know a lot about, running an association and representing banks and credit unions and mortgage companies, representing it at the state house, learning how to properly support opposed bills that can significantly impact your business, or sponsor bills. So, a lot of that work is kind of taken for granted. The people that do the work on the front lines at the state house to fight against and for various things. But you just realized, I think for me, how important it is that somebody's doing that work. And I think most of us in society, we go to parties and you hear someone say, Ty, did you ever hear, how did that dumb law ever get passed?
Yes.
Well, if you're not the one fighting it or giving testimony to oppose it, it can pass, so you just really realize, I think, a lot that there's a lot that's done grassroots wise to fight for these things, to talk to your representatives. And, my experience really was that a lot of those representatives, they can't be experts in everything, and sometimes I think people think they're just an expert in everything. They can't. And if we're not willing to talk to them and let them know why we support or oppose things, bad decisions can be made. So, I think it's very, very important to be involved. It was a great experience because you learn a lot about yourself. You may bring a lot of experience to the table, but, now you have to interact and play with other people that may not agree with you.
Yeah.
And you want to be able to build goodwill with those folks because you do need them. And they may not always agree with you, but it's not so important they always agree. I think it's important that they respect the position and the posture you're taking to try to promote something for your industry.
Well said. Well, tell us about the work you've done. Obviously, this is a diversity, equity, and inclusion podcast, and I know you've done quite a bit of work with minority initiatives and a few other committees that you're involved in to try to advance minority homeownership and affordable housing. So tell us a little bit about the committees you've served on and the initiatives you've joined in order to advance those causes.
Yeah, so, after being on the MBA a few years, and, really as someone who's been in the business for a long time, and as we talked about, I've seen people, lose their homes, and I've approved a lot of loans to put them in. One of the things that's just been mind-numbing to me is when we have these conversations about the housing gaps between minorities and whites. And I would listen to this year after year, and it just was mind-numbing because, like, from my perspective, my simple world, I'm trying to put people in homes because I love the fact that they can build wealth and make memories with their family. But yet you can see the numbers show we're failing in that area. So I had suggested to the committee, I said, why don't we put together a committee to really look at it and see how we can impact it? And we didn't approach it through the idea that we had all the answers by any stretch of the imagination. As a matter of fact, we approached it from the other side. It's like, we got all the questions and maybe none of the answers. But you know what? I've learned sometimes you don't have to be the smartest person. You just need to be able to be willing to ask questions from the people that know, the people that are doing the boots on the ground work. Because in this space, even though the numbers are not great, there are people doing great work in this space. And when we put together the committee, that was really one of our goals, just to deal with the realtors or realtists that are working in this space, the counseling agencies that are doing good work, the loan officers who are doing good work in this space, because there are a lot of them that really focus their energies in this space to do it. And so we wanted to talk to all of them to say, hey, what are they doing? And then taking that information out to other lenders, because I no longer assume everybody knows everything, right? I kind of go the opposite way. And so what I was proud of is we started that committee, Ty, and then I was asked to go to Washington, D.C. for the MBA advocacy conference and speak to all the other associations that were there, the executive directors, the presidents there. And I told them what we were doing in Ohio. And what really encouraged me through that is that a lot of them came up to me afterwards and said, Don, love what you guys are doing in Ohio. Can you tell me how that started? Can I have your PowerPoint presentation? Some of that. And then, just like California, I had other states say, hey, Don, could I talk to you about what you're doing? Because we're now interested in starting our own. So I've done this in a number of other states. This then continued to build because we said, well, if we're doing that, we want to put on lender-facing conferences in Ohio for our banks and our mortgage companies and our credit unions to talk to them really about, what works and what doesn't from the people doing the boots on the ground work. And one of the things that we really wanted to do is kind of create this coalition and this spirit that, all of us in business are fighting for market share, particularly now, right?
Yes.
But whether you're a bank, a credit union, or an independent mortgage banker, we can be fiercely competitive and go out there for market share. But we also can be fiercely aligned on this topic to work together to make an impact on it with the proper mindsets to do that, because the perceptions are not great. Even if our intentions are good and we're trying, the perception is not always great. And I find that disappointing, right, at best. And so I thought, well, let's do that. Let's, through grassroots, do that work. And we had our first lender summit, and that went very, very well. And then we ended up doing a second lender summit, and that went really well. And then what I did is, through all our locals throughout the state, local MBAs, I took the show on the road and went to them to discuss the same message that I had beginning in Washington and on our conferences. And I also assembled loan officer panels from the loan officers that were doing great affordable housing work. And it was very educational working with them, because I think sometimes people think about this, Ty, we've been talking about this housing gap for 5 decades.
Oh, yeah.
We've been throwing products at it for a long, long time. So if products alone are the solution, we're probably going to talk about this for a long time, because it hasn't solved it in 5 decades. And I'm not saying we shouldn't create products, don't get me wrong. I just don't think it's the whole solution. I think there's a lot of other things in the mindset and the approach that will be more impactful, with this. And so when I put together the loan officers, it's funny, they talked about what they did, what their approach was. They all virtually gave the same message to me. And, there's a lot of things I could tell you. We could have a separate talk just on that. But I'll tell you, this one thing latched on to me, and I thought it was a great motto, that this was a gentleman who was a pastor at a church that worked in financial literacy in the minority community. And he looked at me, he says, Don, he goes, I'm going to tell you something. He said, we got to always remember, you can give people the prescription, but it doesn't mean they're going to take the pill. He goes, I work with a lot of people, and he goes, some of them will take the pill and we put them on the road to success. He goes, for some folks, we give them the prescription, and it's hard. Sometimes it's hard to make budgetary and credit decisions, and maybe they can't do it. So they don't always take the pill. But he goes, we put together the program out there, and everybody gets the message. They all get the prescription, and we all hope they all take the pill. And I thought that was just a fabulous message, because, from my perspective, Ty, if I'm running a company and I just deny a minority for a loan, we use a lot of terms in our business that people don't understand.
Yes.
Loan to value, DTI, credits, all these other things, variable income. And the thing is, if I don't understand why I was denied, what do I think? Maybe there was some other reason you didn't want to give me the loan.
Yes.
But if I approach it that I can't help you today, but I can help you tomorrow, and I give you the prescription, you could take the pill. And if I give everybody the roadmap, I think it's just a better message for everybody. So that's a lot. There's that and a whole bunch else that we are trying to teach, to all our members, because again, it's a perception we want to change for our entire membership that's out there. So that was really one of the mantras that we were trying to put out there. And in the end of the day, what we found out is nobody was making great inroads in the minority areas through some shiny toy, through some shiny new product. It was all through the products that were out there and working with the people long enough to overcome the obstacles, whether it was getting a down payment, working with someone like yourself, or working with counseling agencies and giving people the roadmap. And that was it. And sometimes it takes a little more work to do that.
It does. And I often find that specifically in our communities of color, there's been significant financial trauma that has been done to our communities of color over the decades, right? We can go back past 50 years. We don't even need to go that far back, but a lot of the trauma that has been associated with our communities of color as far as finances are concerned, whether it's predatory lending or cash checking places, and you just get yourself into this residual bad cycle, it's really breaking that cycle and providing education as to how you can improve your situation. If it's not credit challenges or DTI challenges, maybe it's reserves, or if it's not reserves, maybe to your point, you have variable income. And it's building that trust and doing it in a meaningful way where people like myself realize, okay, they're not just out to get my money. This really is something that I need to consider to building wealth within my family structure, right? If you can get that trust and work with them just a little bit and provide that prescription, to your point, I love that. It is up to them to take the pill, and how many of us in origination tell a potential borrower, please follow these 1, 2, 3 steps and come back and see me in 30 days and we'll do a refresh on your credit, et cetera. And then you just never see them again. They just disappear. And so I love that you are so focused on providing that prescription and really working with individuals to try to increase home ownership, because it really is one family at a time.
And I think, Ty, that's the great thing. It's like sometimes you're crippled with doing something because you're like, well, how are we going to solve this 30-point gap? Well, I think we do what we're doing. I mean, it's like, and that's when, to go to your question, what I'm proud of is that what we started in Washington is gone into other states now, which we put on lender summits, we put on borrower, we've taken that out on the road. And, we can solve it one family at a time. And if you do that, that's one family that didn't fall into the housing gap, and one can become two can become four. And so, I just think that's really the way to approach it, because if anybody had the simple answer that just solves it, it'd be done.
Yes.
And so it's just not that simple, but I think the solutions are out there. It's just harder work, and it takes a little longer maybe for some of the borrowers to be able to, change their situations. I've had personal friends that same thing. They're like, they almost feel like, there's so much shame. They don't even want to talk to you about why they can't get a loan. And then I've spoken to them like, I'm not judging you. I mean, this is my everyday life. I deal with this. This is the reality. And then you get them onto the roadmap, and it's amazing. They buy homes, refinance their homes. They're doing great, but it's like kind of overcoming that shame that you're not the only person. There's a lot of people that have made bad decisions, had life happen to them. And it's just, being able to talk to somebody you trust and, is you have confidence is willing to help you.
Well, and the other thing is, and I tell this a lot when I'm on panels, or I have family members or friends that ask me questions, and they'll say, oh, I just want to rent, so it's not my problem. I just want to rent so the landlord will fix it. I don't really want to have a mortgage. That seems like a lot. And I always say, you do have a mortgage. You're just paying the mortgage for someone else. There is a mortgage on that home and you are paying it, but instead of building your own asset and building your own equity, you're doing that for someone else. You're funding someone else's retirement. You're paying it either way. And so I feel like once you kind of start breaking it down in that type of simple terms, a lot of times people do have the realization that, okay, so I'm paying for my landlord to have a better life. What am I doing for myself, right? And oftentimes that will start that little piece of brain matter that's like, okay, let's maybe start thinking about this in a different way. Maybe let's start making some different life choices that will get us to a point where we can pay a mortgage and increase our own wealth. So thank you for saying that. Okay, so unfortunately we're out of time. This always happens on my interviews. I always go way over, but I'm talkative and I love hearing from people and learning about things. But I end every single interview by asking, if you could go back in time and give your younger self one piece of advice, what would that be?
Great question. And, I think for me, it's don't let your fear in life hold you back. Okay. Because I could see going back to my youth, fear held me back from certain decisions, maybe certain career moves, maybe from pursuing certain dreams. And sometimes it was done with, gee, I'm not going to do it. Ty's smarter than me. She's more experienced than me. she's better educated than me. And all those things may be true, but you know what's not? Is the fact that none of those other folks that you kind of put in your mind is why you might not do things, have your passions and your God-given talents. And that's the difference. So it's like in my, going back to my youth, I would have said yes to life more. And just whatever lesson there was to learn, I would have taken it on and pursued without any fear, because nobody had my passions and my talents. We're all unique people.
Oh, that is a wonderful piece of advice that you can not only give your younger selves, but we can take that into consideration now. How often do we not go for promotions or other job opportunities because we have that fear associated with it? So I think that that is classically great advice, Don. Thank you very much. And thank you for joining us today. I know you're very busy and I really do appreciate the time you've taken to be with us. And thank you for watching. And we will see you again next month. Bye, guys.
My pleasure.